My name is Thandazile Mkhize. Thandazile means prayer or prayed. So yes, I am a Christian. I'm originally from Durban, South Africa, and spent most of my career life in Joburg before moving to the UK. I have over 20 years of experience. Yes, I'm that old. And have worked in across multiple industries that includes financial services, banking, retail banking, capital, all part of the financial services, insurance, and also multimedia consulting. And I'm now in healthcare, and it's quite an interesting industry that I'm in now. And the company that I work for is a venture capital backed company, and that comes with also just very interesting ways of doing things. So just before we get on today's program, I just want to first maybe take you through the Global Ubuntu Data Network, what it is and why it came about. Again, I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us today. Welcome our panelists. They're gonna introduce them later. Any who's my colleague and partner in the network or the community is also gonna introduce himself at a later stage. So what is Global Ubuntu Data Network? We are excited to officially launch it, and this is our first event, so bear with us if there are any issues. We are hoping we will get better and do more exciting things with you. We've created this as a community to connect African data and AI professionals across the continent and in the diaspora. We built this network to be an accessible, relatable space where our community can connect, collaborate, and spark ideas and create real impact. A place where we learn from each other, support each other, and push the boundaries of what's possible for Africa's data future. What is our vision and purpose? Our main themes are connection, collaboration, and impact. So we want to bring together voices across the countries, careers, and discipline. We want to collaborate. So let's create opportunities to learn, to solve problems, and to build together. But also, and mainly, is we want to have a visible impact. So using our collective expertise to shape the future of data and AI in Africa. So what we are hoping to do in the coming months, obviously with your help and with your involvement, we've looked at where we wanna focus on, and these are the areas that we wanna do. And so it would be to run master classes. So that will be focused sessions where we are teaching on specific topics that will be led by expertise or experts. So it could be even people from within the group or external people. So if anything, I would love for you to stay connected with us and keep sharing your ideas, or where there's areas you feel you could contribute, do reach out to us. I've had we've had the fortune of having people already having suggestion or sharing suggestions with us. So we'll be covering like practical data skills, the imaging technology, career development, and leadership. So it's gonna span across not just the technical aspect of it, but also just how do we build ourselves to be fully effective data professionals. We also want to continue with these discussions where we zoom in or focus on trending topics such as, agentic AI. What does it mean for us as data specialists, as things are moving so quickly? How do we position ourselves from upskilling ourselves, but also even within the organization, how do we help steer the organization in the right direction? So that's where some of the topics we could just focus on. And then also we will be looking into doing hackathons. I think that's one that I'm actually very excited about, where we want to ideate and solve in real time. So let's put some time together and find real African challenges or real problems that we believe can be solved through data, and work on them and solve and come up with a full-on solution. And again, on this one, someone who's already doing something in this space of hackathons, we've managed to have a connection with. So as we start building towards this, we'll be working closely with them. So again, collaboration and partnership with many initiatives that are already on the ground is where we are seeing this space going. Another very dear topic for me is mentorship. So we want to create a structured mentorship across the continent and the abroad, basically. So what we're saying is we will help build it in a structured way, so that people like you can be based in Congo and have a mentor who is in South Africa. Why not? Who's stopping that? And like, I believe even as a mentor, you can learn so much from someone who's not from your background. So it is definitely stands to be a win-win opportunity, but also we will drive how that is structured, and so that it is productive, it's not destructive. So those are the things that we are looking into doing. And then also, I've mentioned partnerships. So that's what we are hoping to have as the foundation of what we're doing. So everyone or anyone who has some initiative that they believe can contribute into this space, please do reach out. We have a LinkedIn page that we've created. We're gonna have even more direct ways of communicating as we grow and build this platform. So what makes this network unique is that we are grounded in the spirit of Ubuntu. That is, I am because we are. This is a community built by us for us. Every member is a contributor, not just a participant. Today marks the beginning of that journey. We are grateful that you are here, and we look forward to building something meaningful together. Okay, so to start off, let's hear where everyone is joining us from. Can we have a poll just for you to share what region or country, so it's country and city, if you can just put it in that format so that we know what is the representation we have. Okay. While everyone is completing the poll, I'd like to hand over to my colleague and partner, Anifiok Ibong, who will introduce himself and then introduce our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you confirm that you can hear me? Just a thumbs up, yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Tanda, for that amazing purpose and vision-driven statement. That was really well curated. And thanks a lot for curating this together so we can all sort of see where we're going, where we're headed, what the vision looks like. And so thank you very much. And I appreciate that. Welcome once again. My name is Anifiok Ibong. And just like I always tell my colleagues, you can call me Annie. So let it not be heard that someone beat their tongue trying to pronounce my name. So, so yeah, Annie is totally fine. Definitely. So I'm a data engineering lead and at one of the largest financial services and insurance companies in the UK. And Actually, it's my 10 years actually in the industry. I'm not like Tanda, 20 years. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. But yeah, I'm just half of that. So yeah, I think it's actually this month. So kudos to myself on that. And I'm really grateful for how far I've come. So my sort of competencies are spanned across, the entire data ecosystem. I've sort of like, I think at every point in time, sort of touched based on one aspect of data lifecycle management, like from data analysis, transitioning into data science, and then into core data engineering, and now into data products specifically. And it's been an amazing journey for me. I've had the privilege of working in telecommunications, e-commerce, insurance in the largest, and also in consulting, basically, at least. I think I had some time in KPMG in Nigeria and also PwC in the UK as well. So that sort of like gave me that good mix of consulting and industry experience from a data analytics perspective, rather. So yeah, that's a bit of my journey. Yeah, not so much. Definitely. I like to keep it simple. So yeah, thank you once again. And maybe I'm going to just sort of like call on one of the speakers. I'm going to just go around the room for the speakers and just I think it'd be nice for you to like sort of say a thing or two about yourself as an introduction. I'm sure you have the best words to better describe yourself than I would. So in that regard, and you forgive me if I, you know, maybe you don't pronounce your name, and it'd be nice if you also help me out as well. So yeah, I'll just start with the first next to my name, which is Tepiso. I'm sure I did great with that name, right?
Yeah, that's brilliant, man.
Yeah, thank
You
you.
did brilliantly. My name is Tsepiso Moswani. Similar to you in the office, everyone just calls me TP. Yeah, I'm almost as old as Tanda, 20 plus in the industry, currently in the banking industry where I've been for almost a decade. Yeah, my journey has spun through software development, BI developer, data mining. Like you can hear how old I am. I'm not talking data science or AI. It's data mining and all of that. So yeah, that's in short my background.
Thank you very much, Tepiso. Thanks a lot for that introduction. I think the next person I have to my right would be Grant. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me and for the opportunity to engage on this specific topic. Yeah, so my name is Grant. I work at the University of Cape Town as an academic, and I specifically focus on quite a bit of research on emerging technology, specifically around big data, intuition, artificial intelligence. And some of those other components within that sphere of research. So yeah, I think I'm not a normal academic because I was in industry for 11 years, and I was more of a infrastructure IT person. So specifically around networks, security, and things like that. And then during my time in industry, I then shifted away from the infrastructure more into the application level of things, where I worked for a startup based in Johannesburg for a number of years. We basically build dashboards for companies. And then I think my love over time started growing in that specific regard, specifically around big data, specifically, right? And yeah, so I'm currently still based at UCT, and this is typically where I teach undergrad as well as postgraduate students um, in the field of information systems. Very happy to be here. Thank you, colleagues.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you. Like I said previously, it's a very good mix. Sorry, mix of people we have in the room. Like we have people from infrastructure, I mean, I think we're looking forward to having a great time today. Thank you very much, Grant.
Thank you.
The next person I have, and I think you all just aligned yourself on my screen, is Seliwe. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right.
No, it's okay, Annie.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm Celiwe.
Okay.
But I guess I'm used to Celiwe by now. Yeah, I'm Celiwe Makamate. First and foremost, really, I would like to thank everybody for this opportunity, really. I feel privileged to be part of this impactful conversation today. Um, Launching this global Ubuntu data network. I believe great things will come out of this network, and thank you so much. Um, I'm over 15 years in the data space. Really, currently, I'm a senior manager in data analytics at Access Bank SA. So mainly my role is more on a strategic role within the bank in the business intelligence unit. So just transforming data initiative, supporting the executive with insights, just driving that business outcomes. So just out of that professional sphere, I also am a founder of Lean Placements. So Lean Placements, it is a recruitment and consulting firm, focuses mainly on data analytics. I also coach the upcoming data talent in South Africa. So I'm very excited to be part of this network. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Silewe. Thanks. That's an amazing one. Thank you. It's not, now I feel like the youngest experienced person in the room now. So please, we can stop talking about the years. Thank you. So the next person for me would be Tosin. Yeah. Hi, Tosin.
Tosin, you're muted.
Yep. I think it might be having one challenge or the other. But I think we might be able to progress. And we can come back to that introduction, or maybe just give it about 1 minute thereabouts.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Apologies for not mentioning that. So I think it's a very great privilege to be a very big thanks to Hani, and also uh, please, I need the pronunciation of and
Yeah,
please
Tanda.
help me. Okay, Sandra,
And
yeah, yeah. I think it's a very great privilege to be here. And just like Hani said, he said he's the youngest, but I think I officially claimed that position at this moment because we have lots of data gurus in the house, right? My name is Tosin Lesomi. I currently work with the Deloitte team of Nigeria. That's Deloitte and Touch Tomato. Currently an assistant manager in the technology team. Well, we've been in the data space for some time now, say close to, generally in technology, close to 8 years thereabouts. So that's why I said I've claimed the official young space. Yeah, building data solutions and technology solutions with Deloitte for say close to 3 years, but before then, worked with Zenith Bank and financial services industry. So I had a first-hand information or first-hand real life knowledge of how data works in that space. And currently, with Deloitte's team, we've been building technology solutions for different clients across financial services, risk, oil and gas, telecoms. I mean, and honestly, it has been a very wide experience having to build such solutions across this four major industries. So basically, that's just really about me now. Thank you.
Thank you very much once again to everyone. Thanks, Tosin, and thank you once again to everyone who was, sort of taken out of their time, busy weekends to actually be here. And also, thank you to to everyone in the room as well. I know we can't go through the room to introducing everyone, but thank you very much. We love you. Thank you for making it here today. If you could just all sort of put like icons on the screen just to celebrate yourself for being here. Thank you. Would appreciate that. While I hand it back to my colleague Tanda as we go from the starter to our main meal. Yeah, and then we'll have some dessert at the end. So just stay posted. All right. Thank you, Tenda. Go for it.
And palate cleansers in between meals. Awesome. That was very insightful to learn more about our guests. We are sure, I think just by the panel alone, we can run a very mean machine of a data company. Okay, we're gonna just switch things up now and move to the business of the day and the discussions that we have for today. So looking at the today's being the launch event, we looked into how what are the key topics that we feel are necessary to have. And what we are going to look at today is the data and AI maturity across our continent, Africa. And we're going to look at the impact that it has, these technologies on our continent, on our people. Are they positively impacting us? And what are the opportunities that exist? With the help of my guests and panelists, we're just gonna unpack that. So to start off, well, let's look at the data maturity, and I will just pull in Tepiso as our first person to just highlight for us as a leader in this space and have been for a while. What do you think from a strategic perspective? What does a maturity look like in an organization where we can say they are truly leveraging data for decision making?
Oh, sorry, I've got my camera off because I've got a 5-year-old who usually around this time expects to be swimming. I take him to swimming classes, so he's like causing a bit of a menace in the background. So apologies for the camera being off a bit.
No worries.
But I got the gist of the question there, Tanda. I guess if we're truly talking unicorn levels of maturity in data and analytics, I would say is a truly mature data and analytics or data-driven organization is one where the data products, I think Annie spoke about data products in organizations that have not moved into those type of methodologies, they'll probably still talk about data warehouses or data marts. But in those organizations, I think that is where their data is well governed in those spaces. There is very clear ownership on their data. So this speaks to very strong data governance. And they've got modern or scalable platforms, data platforms. And this is not a technology conversation, right? We're not going into like your tech has to be cloud or has to be on-prem. It's just it has to be scalable. We've got methodologies like your Kimball methodologies that help you with how to scale the data warehouse or how to scale data. So when it's truly scalable, and then you also then get into the people aspect where you cover your data literacy and you've got a culture of curiosity. So people are very curious to then start using data in your organization. I think that's where you truly say your organization is mature. There's a few things you can then start seeing, I guess, in those organizations is where they treat their data as a strategic asset and not a byproduct. You'll find in most organizations you have to fight for data programs. But when you're truly mature, you don't have to fight for a data program because your data is also treated as an asset equally to your hardwares, equally to your laptops, and all of those things. Like if someone comes and asks anywhere for a laptop in your department, it's very quick to go and give them a laptop. You know exactly how to go about doing that because it's seen as an asset. So similar to your data, you'll see it in that perspective. Decision making, like I see a lot of organizations where decision making is moved to so I'm just going to switch off my camera because my little guy is gone. So decision making as well, you'll see it being moved more closer to the actual people who need to make decisions using data. Like we speak about we're trying to enable the business. But actually, it's your whole organization that wants to be able to be data driven. Your software developers want to be able to measure how they're doing in terms of releasing their code. Your finance people want to measure things like your revenue. Your people organizations wants to be able to measure your how you retain talent and stuff like that. So the moment you see that being able to get driven in an organization and get embedded in the organization where you don't have to have arguments about it, or you don't have to go to some centralized team that has to put it on a ticket and then you have to do a request. Like that for me is where I say it's true maturity. But again, I said it's in the unicorn land of maturity levels because it's very hard to actually reach
Got you.
that level of maturity.
Amazing. That was very elaborative and insightful. Thank you. Just to continue on that, you've experienced working in South Africa, and now in the UK. I think on this point, I want to also pull in Annie to add his view. But like from your end, episode, what are the parallels and contrast in terms of data maturity? Is our organization back home lagging behind, or are we actually on par? And also, if you feel like, just maybe expand as to where you see we could be, like maybe being ahead as a continent because of maybe of our advantages.
I'll speak to the South African side because I worked in South Africa previously. So I'll speak to that because that's where I've got the most experience, right? Is I think we're competing. Like we are competing, if not almost leading. Uh, and the biggest driver is because, like, you look at the slogan you just spoke about as Ubuntu. Like data driven is an Ubuntu thing, is a human thing, right? Africans are very human, are very connected, and we value relationships. And data helps you with that connection of relationships. Where else, if you come over to the north or to the UK, because I'm also based now in the UK, it's very everything is almost numbers driven, right? It's almost becomes like a tick box thing, where else data is not necessarily a tick box thing. Data is to help you validate what you feel and what you think you understand about something. And I think that's where we're quite different from a South Africa perspective versus a UK perspective. Where I see the maturity in the North is in the tech space. Like if you look at all of the technologies that get released, I think Microsoft Ignite was just a few days ago. If you look at those tech that actually gets released in that space, the first place where they land is North Europe or UK South, and then you only land up in South Africa. You look at Microsoft when they in their Azure space, the only time we truly started getting South African data centers was probably about 5, 6 years into the Azure journey. And that's where I'm like, you see the contrasts, right? The human side of it, I think in Africa, we're doing quite well. We're able to connect the numbers, we're able to do the true analytics. But from a tech perspective, we're lagging behind, but not because of our own doing. There are political plays. I think for those that are following G20, you saw Cyril Ramaphosa and Trump have got a bit of a spat between the two of them. So the political landscape is not helping us at all as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I see it. But I guess as professionals, we are competing. And that's why you see a whole lot of us out in the diasporas becoming data professionals, becoming embedded in these huge organizations. And some of us actually leading some of these huge organizations. It's because as professionals, we are actually competing and competing quite well.
Amazing. You touch on something which I learned, or like we triggered something that I learned recently of they called it data colonization. So and it actually I looked at it and thought it's true. We need to be in a space where Africa also build data centers. Let the external people's data be in Africa. Like we are now dealing with the ramifications of moving our resource across and then paying more when it's like byproduct. So isn't it, I think even from a data point of view, we are just sending data out. We're sending data out. When are we going to be the ones now actually pulling the data and sending off data products. Thank you for that one, Tepiso. Annie, what can you add to that? I know you have a lot to add.
I mean, I couldn't help but agree with Tepiso on the basis that many African organizations are actually making a very strong perspective in terms of digitization, in especially data and analytics. But nonetheless, I think there are a few sort of like contrasts that we could actually, I think there's some spaces or some, would I call them gaps specifically, but yeah, maybe I just, for sake of argument, just call them that. There are just a few things that I think I've kind of observed in my experience having worked in Nigeria, right, and also and now currently in the UK. I mean, I can see there are a couple of contrasts and some things that we could actually potentially do to get better. And I think one of them for me is on the conversation of data governance. I think largely in Africa, governance sort of seems to be reactive rather than strategic, right? It feels like it's not being put at the forefront, whilst in organizations like in the UK or I'd say in the West, right, you have data governance embedded in design, right? When you're actually coming up with an operating model, data governance is actually something that is being embedded in that entire design from end to end, right? And for Africa, we sort of see that as an afterthought, and so I think that's some area where we could potentially leverage data governance to sort of scale as organizations in Africa. That's on one. Second thing in that regard, still on data governance, also would be lack of clear ownership and accountability. Like I'll give you a very typical example. A lot of the organizations, or some of the organizations, let me put it that way, their analytics team typically sits within IT, right? And because it sits within IT, uh, you have data teams, spin out data products one way or the other, and there is lack of ownership from the business teams. There is no one to drive ownership or accountability, and you tend to find IT trying to drive adoption. And so adoption is quite difficult if you have IT trying to drive it rather than the various business teams who own this product. So that's another challenge I've seen. Also, one I would think about also is on fragmented and siloed data architecture. Typically, you would have different teams collecting and managing its own data. It doesn't come into an enterprise architectural level, right? These are some of the things that we see out here in the UK, like most of the organization, even in my current organization, right? We have like an enterprise data architecture team who sort of builds that layer for how the interconnected systems would operate, right? And then every team who needs to sort of create or build their own data have to ensure that it is aligned with enterprise architecture. So that's fragmented and siloed nature of data architecture within Africa is also a challenge that I've sort of seen. So like you have different teams having their own data and building their own reports. You can have like 1,000 reports, from people's Excel sheets and the likes, but we don't sort of have that integrated environment. Another example would be data quality management, which is usually not formalized or monitored. Like data quality is something that we treat after it is being found. It is not something that is being resolved before it gets to the end users, right? Another example, just to move quickly, also would be around regulatory maturity and enforcement. Um, just to also specify, there is a bit of limited investment in governance tools, skills, and also roles as well. Like a lot of companies I see in Africa, in my experience, or I'll say Nigeria specifically, so that I don't, use the whole Africa. But I'm sure it's something that you can agree, it's something that applies to Africa in general, is that there's limited investment when it comes to governance tools, skills and roles. Like you don't see governance being treated as part of the enterprise design and all that. Then there is data culture and literacy as well. I mean, we are sort of less mature from a data culture perspective, which is from a people perspective as well, and literacy. Like let's think about this from, let's say, an average AWS certification or Azure certification is being priced in dollars, right? And so for those who probably work in Africa who earn in lower currencies, might be unable to sort of be able to pay for these certifications or even spin up their own infrastructure or resources on AWS or Azure because these are priced in dollars. I mean, I can typically do that because like you earn in dollars. So I mean you earn in pounds, so you can spin up resources in dollars. It wouldn't really cost much to you. But what would you say about the average person in Africa when it comes to upskilling? So lastly, I think I'll just reference one of the posts one of my senior data architects at my colleagues at the office posted on LinkedIn recently, where he talked about what does the A in CDAO, and I'm sure Tepiso you can relate because you're a chief data and analytics officer. So I think the question was around what does the A in the CDAO mean? Does it mean analytics or does it mean AI? If it means analytics, then who is sort of looking after AI, right? So I think my response to that, and I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I had a deep thought, and I think I thought to myself and said, oh, you know what? I think this would largely depend on the organization's op model. By op model, I mean operating model, right? Where you have, say, people, process, technology, governance, and data, for example, just for sake of argument, right? And if the op model is not designed to cater to AI, then the A in CDAO would typically stand for analytics and not AI specifically. So I think also there's also that gap in terms of data AI maturity in Africa. And I think one of the questions I will actually pose to our maybe audience or our speakers would be around, is Africa also actually ready for AI? But that will come up in subsequent conversations. So thank you very much, Tanda.
Amazing. Yeah, that's such a mouthful, both of you. I think one of the things that I maybe just picked up is probably one of the areas where our continent is struggling with is our government and policy. So these the like your UK and the Western countries are sometimes, the companies are sometimes forced by the policies imposed by the government to actually make sure that there's governance in place. So I do believe that our government or our countries in Africa, they slack so much in terms of policy, implementing policy that's gonna drive our governance in how we handle our data or how these are implemented. I'm keen to hear from our friend Tosin. I'm calling them friends because they gave us an opportunity to be in the World Cup. Nigeria, thank you.
That's a shot.
Let's not even go there. Let's not go there.
No. I know.
Be in the World Cup yourself.
We'll come back to this. We'll come back to this.
Hi, Tosini.
Hi, Sandra.
I'm keen to hear from your end, Nigeria. You are there on the, like, Annie can speak, but Annie has been away from Nigeria for so long, so he's not really in touch with what's happening. Please give us your view and just even positive stuff, man. We don't want to be coming out of here thinking, oh, there's no hope for Africa. I believe there's a lot of good things happening in our continent. In fact, at some point I'll be thinking maybe I should go back home. There's just so much excitement going, Please share with us what's happening in Nigeria. Oh, and also, where in Nigeria are you based?
Based in Lagos, yeah.
Sorry, where?
I'm based in Lagos.
Lagos. Okay, nice.
Lagos,
Amazing.
Nigeria. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've really spoken about a lot of people have said a lot of interesting things. So what I see about Nigeria is there is a lot of there's a massive level of growth, especially in data space, in the analytics space. There's a massive level of growth. Before I even start talking about Nigeria, right, there are a couple of things that was said earlier, which I would really like to touch on, which has to do with the fact that the challenge, but I'll talk about the opportunities.
Tosin, I just
Yes, please.
I don't want to lose a very insightful view. You are not fully audible. I'm not too sure whether it seems like there's a bit of wind coming through. And are you able to just do something? Yeah, even if it means just give him a few minutes, please.
Yep,
Okay, so how's it now?
Much
much
better.
better now.
Splendid, splendid. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, so there's
Oh,
been a
wow,
massive
even better.
wave in the data space in the past couple of say 5, 10 years ish, just like what Annie said. I mean, kudos to him, one of the founding data gurus in Lagos. So ever since, and I'm going to speak in more from the talent perspective, right? Because so starting first from in organizations like Data Science Nigeria. So one of their major goals, which they came up with, they started way back in 2016-ish, right? And their goal was to actually create a lot of awareness and trainings around data science. And I can tell you for free that a whole lot has actually stepped out of that, right? And with sometime in 2022, there were conferences like the Data Community Africa that came up and started having data conferences every year. And now we're beginning to see a whole lot of people become upskilled in the area of data analytics. And that is also translating in the industries where we are having young guys, young boys, just building LLMs that are able to compete globally. I mean, I just saw a young boy lately, 17-year-old. The boy said he wants to build an LLM that will compete with ChatGPT. And you know what? They could actually compete, right? Because they have a local advantage, right? And one of the local advantages I've seen is that many of our data sets are taken abroad, but the models that are trained abroad, I mean, outside in the nation, don't have the local context we have here. Because of that, a lot of people are getting into that space, and we are able to win on the perspective that people are now beginning to say, oh, can I build a local AI LLM model that would begin to understand? Okay, let me give you a typical use case, right? But this was not in Nigeria, this was in Kenya. But I know there are a lot of things like that in Nigeria. There was a particular company, I think Didactic or something. They built a model that is able to do a diagnosis of malaria, right? And by the time they were done with that model, the model was almost 98% accurately aligned with what was the now, you can't compare the kind of diagnosis you do in Africa for malaria, what is done abroad. So what that means is that because they were able to achieve that, they were able to build something that suits their own context, right? Same also in Nigeria, we are doing a whole lot. Organizations are beginning to see the need for AI and they are beginning to embed it even in their web applications. We're having a whole lot of people upskilling in that regard. Even the federal government of Nigeria presently launched an initiative called the 3MTT, 3 Million Technical Talents, which is to build 3 million technical talent across the nation, I think in the space of 4 years, based on their new national AI strategy. So from the talents perspective, I mean, there's a whole lot going on. There's a whole lot of understanding. A whole lot of people are trying to even understand the concept of AI and leverage it much more. The areas I just see is that I think, which I believe that we can really do more is regarding gaps is still like one of us mentioned earlier is the aspect of the data centers. I wouldn't want to touch on that, but I think someone really Chef so really picked on that because I mean I was doing research and I discovered that Africa owes less than 1% of the entire data centers globally. And all of those four are in South Africa. So what that means is that compute cost is rising. Our models are not trained on data. Our models are trained on data that, our data goes out, just like what you said, we're exporting our data. And I think you mentioned that. You mentioned we're
Data
exporting.
colonization.
Right. So the cost of cloud computing, and I mean, lately I just had to discover that AI is built on the foundation of computing power, right? So that's an area I really, really strongly believe that we really need to, if we truly want to maximize the power of the community that we're, because what I've also discovered is the African community have a rugged determination to do what they can, regardless of the infrastructure provided for them. So people are doing so much with so little. So I believe that talent-wise, there's a whole lot. Everyone is moving, and if we can have continuous investment, like what was said, in those infrastructure, and also regarding that's the also aligning the policies as well. I believe that a whole lot. I mean, Africa is just ready to explode in a few couple of years. Thank you.
Amazing. Wow. It's exciting. I actually just want to get to know and understand more of all these things that are happening there at Tosin. So maybe virtual coffees are necessary here.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. just like I love how you've highlighted the great innovations that are coming. Just on that topic, we have a poll just to test the audience on what what African innovation they are aware of. So if you can just do that poll for us.
Can I come again? Okay. I thought, okay, so sorry.
Yeah, that's you should have gotten it as well, Tosin. All right, let me now bring in our two guests, Grant and Keliwe. Tosin has already touched on talent, but I'm keen. Grant is a lecturer at UCT. He's actually he was my supervisor for my honors. Grant eats literature review for breakfast. So Grant, welcome again. I just want to hear from you from an academic perspective. How well are African institutions preparing for future data professionals to meet the real world needs?
So thank you so much. Interestingly, something that I read on a colleague's blog earlier today, and I'll just read it very quickly, is when AI begs for better data, right, and challenges of unanticipated data work and organizations. And then his blog continues by referencing Pedro Domingos on one of his books titled The Master Algorithm. And it specifically says here that all we need to do is provide it, in this case AI, with enough of the right kind of data, and it will discover the corresponding knowledge, which is very interesting. So my in order to answer that question on African institutions, and we were specifically talking about universities, I want to kind of give it a bit of a spin and be a bit critical in my answer from having both been in industry and now in academia. So I'll be honest in my response, and of course more a bit critical as well. So when we are thinking about talent acquisition and specifically how well our African institutions are typically preparing to in a way provide or future data professionals, I would say that we prepare them in parts, right? And what I mean by that is if you want strong theoretical grounded or grounding individuals that's specifically very strong in, let's say, statistics, research logics, problem structuring or problematization, or even other forms of theory grounding. I think universities are very well in doing that, right? But that doesn't necessarily automatically, in a way, I would say, translate into, let's say, industry-ready data practitioners, right? I recall when I started my internship and at a financial service organization based here in Cape Town. One of the managers that I reported to said to me, you can now forget everything that you've learned as an undergrad. You now need to start learning the packages that we have here, right? The products, how the networks are set up, how customers are logging, creating their life policies, how business managers and the consultants end up calling. So we had to kind of learn everything from the beginning. So that specific translation doesn't necessarily happen automatically, right? So we specifically said, my view is that there's, to a certain degree, there's a disconnect between problems students typically try to solve in class and the really, I would say, messy and, let's say, incomplete real world problems that the industry tend to deal with. So the talent, of course, is there, right? It's just not sharpened in the environment where it's eventually expected in a way to perform, right? And I think that in itself, my colleague there, Tsepiso, and I think Annie also spoke about maturity, right? I think that's also a maturity issue on its own, right? Apart from that. So as we tend to continue to kind of break that cycle, there's this continuous I think attempt between universities and industry to create that partnership. That's why, as an example, University of Cape Town, we tend to have quarterly meetings with executives from industry to try to understand whether or not our programs are fitted or fitting to what they are trying to achieve. For argument's sake, with the blow up of artificial intelligence, we ask the questions in terms of what is it currently that the industry typically needs from universities, right? And sometimes that's typically sometimes where the blur specifically comes in terms of really truly understanding that specific model. And of course, there's quite a bit of research on that as well in terms of how does, as an example, programs within information systems or even computer science, as an example, how do they really provide value to those individuals or those students that end up going to, let's say, Old Mutual or the Momentums or the Sanlums of the world. So yeah, I think that what's important here for me is to a certain degree, exposure in my view isn't a luxury anymore, right? The idea is that you can't necessarily teach data work purely in a lecture hall. The idea would be that, yes, of course, we need sandboxes, we need cloud labs, we need real data sets, with all of the imperfections. And yes, again, there's programs at many institutions that are getting it right. But even in conversations that I had with AWS a few weeks ago, in fact, we went to their offices here, in their new offices, I would say, here in Cape Town. And there was discussions around the table where they were saying that can they actually come to UCT, as an example, or can they join universities to show them to actually teach our students, right? So many of the professionals around the table were actually saying that they are willing to take a month off to contribute towards a course within, for argument's sake, IT architecture, or within project management, or within let's say databases, etc. So those are typically some of the things that we are starting to see, and that we believe could potentially be positive, right? So I think I'll end off in saying that if universities, or specifically African institutions like UCT and others, if academia keeps avoiding that, right, it tend to complicate the curriculum design as well. Then we kind of become part of the problem if we are not able to absorb and typically work with others from industry. So I'll end it off there, and then thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Yeah, that was quite insightful. And I do believe networks such as this one is actually gonna play some role in terms of just trying to bridge that gap between the institutions and the industry, and we come together. And yeah, because you're right, we do need constant conversations across these these communities. And yeah, just moving on to Taliwe. Welcome again, Sisi. And yeah, I think what I would love to hear from you, because you're doing a lot in the space of now. So like moving from people have graduated and now have entered the industry. So how do we nurture that talent and grow that talent in the data space? What are you seeing as the gaps firstly, maybe from a skills and mindset point of view of our people?
Thank you so much, Tanda, for that question. Actually, it's very close to my heart. So I'll first start just to answer it from a senior manager in the BI space. I'll get to the coaching part. So from these years, having to get these data talent into my team, what I've realized really from that point, I saw that there was actually a gap. So this particular individual, it's well qualified, has the most amazing qualification in terms of data qualification. However, when you start now want them to put that into practice, right? There is that gap. So you still have to now spend time with this individual, try and train in terms of, okay, now we need to write a SQL code. Now we need to put a cap as a business partner, because it's not only about a code, right? You need to be able to speak to a stakeholder that gave us a requirement, try and understand what is being required before you can actually get technical. So those were kind of gaps that I could identify. That's where then my interest to open lean placement started. I say, you know what? I think there is a gap here, and this can actually help most of the organizations, because I think we are actually facing the same issues here. So really going to now a coaching space, I've seen quite a lot of interest of this upcoming data talent in the space of data analytics. So they've approached me. Even these few days, I had a lot of them saying we need to join your coaching services. So the first thing I ask these upcoming data talent to say, okay, because data space is quite huge. So you cannot just say, okay, I want to learn more about data analytics. We've got data engineering, we've got data science, now there's AI. So what interests you? So that one question, you'll see that there is actually some confusion right there, right? The individual is well qualified. They've done BSc computer science. You look at their marks, it's amazing. And I'm like, okay, right, just that one question, there's a confusion there. So you need to actually even start there to explain the difference between these roles. So for me, it's really close to my heart, because I've seen some of them, they are actually working for quite good companies, and I've seen the growth from where they started with me up until now. I can really say, wow, what a wow, because look at what you can actually now deliver. So I always tell them, you know what, it's not always about a technical skills, because really businesses are businesses. So we speak business language there, we speak real problems. Yes, we need to be technical, but first you need to understand that space. You need to understand your business. So I will just make an example now. Last week I had a session with one of my coaches. She was excited, really. She said, can we get into a call? I said, okay, it's okay. Let me see what you have done. She started showing me this SQL code. I can actually do this and that. One question to her was that, what business question are we answering? You know, and it just now ended right there to say, okay, she had to take a step back to say, yes, I've done this amazing analysis, but what is it that we're trying to answer here? So there's quite a lot of work that I'm actually doing in that coaching space, which I do outside of my corporate sphere. So really, Tanda, the gaps that I've identified with the even the professionals. Let me not even now touch on the graduates. right? The people that I've worked with, that I'm working with, right? So the gaps really, the so what, the so what gap. So you've done this amazing analysis, you've built your nice dashboard, you've done your model, right? But the so what, that strategic acumen, I think that we need to do more there with our data talent or our data professionals. Let's not always get excited to show with our amazing dashboard, oh yes, I can really design it very nicely, but so what, right? Because the executives are actually interested to the so what, because that's that one thing that will drive the business, that will make them to make those critical decisions. Are we losing money here? Are we making profit? Are we losing customers? And so what, right? So that is one gap that I have identified, and I think we need to start putting those heads to see how we can get into that mindset. Secondly, the other one, let's treat data as a product. So let's treat data as a product. So I often see that, so with the data talent, they will just, even the other professionals, they will treat their work, or maybe someone has just built a dashboard, it's just an once-off report. So it's not really they need to treat it as a sustainable, governed asset. That's where you get to have data as a product. We need to start embracing this data as a product, just to understand data governance, right? Data governance, I think it is a base, because we can have the very good infrastructure, very skilled people, but if we don't have proper governance, we are facing a lot of issues. Data quality issues, they are very important. So I think if we start to instill that sense of ownership, right, over the entire data life cycle, not just technical skills or coding. So I think those are the two gaps that I've identified throughout my journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. And yeah, I think we are all, we understand what you're saying. And I think the one point that you touched on even us as well-experienced professionals in the space is they maybe a different angle on this, and maybe it's a piece of a 1 minute response on this one is we sometimes feel like stuck in the technical space. How do we change and shift from just being technical professionals, but to start now moving into strategic roles, leadership roles, like, because I think when you are a data engineer, data analyst, you focus so much on the technical aspect, and there's always something you need to learn. So even your learning is consumed by the technical knowledge. But how do we start shifting so that you can move into strategic roles? You can see your growth in your career as well. Just 1 minute on that one, Tsepi, so please. We are time constrained.
Cool. I think Annie touched on one of it, is that a lot of the time, so in a lot of organizations, you find that data and analytics is stuck in IT. And then data and analytics is trying to drive a IT strategy. And that's where you end up being very technology driven, because the people you speak to in there is either your CTOs who want something from a technology perspective. And then we end up chasing infrastructure, you end up chasing the latest technologies, your Databricks, your Fabric, your Power BIs. But analytics is beyond those things, right? If you start embracing the fact that analytics, for me, analytics is in the conversation. If you're able to deliver a message around what the data tells you in contrast to your business strategy, that for me is analytics. And I think that's a huge mind shift to analytics professionals, because a lot of the courses that we go and study, clearly where you touched on it, they do teach us SQL, but they don't teach you why the SQL. Right. They'll teach you how to write SQL code, but they don't tell you that you write this SQL code because being able to see the number of clients that you've got can either tell the COO to hire more people in the front office, or it can tell the COO that he doesn't need to hire more people in the front office. It doesn't teach us that. So there's a shift, like there's multiple things that affect how we think or grow in this space. Is one is if you have access to senior leaders in your space, get as close as possible to them from a mentorship perspective, but also in where you want to learn how the business actually works. Then you start taking how the business works, apply your data analytics skills to see where you can fit in. There are multiple facets to data and analytics as a capability. We have your governance side. So you may actually look and say, my capabilities here, I can actually protect the business from incurring regulatory fees if I did this, right? And you can then start applying your mind in that aspect. Not everyone is a superstar that's going to show these numbers on a dashboard in the data and analytics space. Not everyone is an engineering unicorn that's going to create these brilliant data pipelines that are real time. It doesn't work like that. Some of us are just going to be there in the business to help advise. Some of us are there in the business to give access to data because some of this analytics is not necessarily supposed to be done by us. The business guys who are actually going to make this decision at the end of the day need to be able to have access to that data to make the decision. So there's multiple aspects. I think being able to or being open to be mentored. That's the first one. Just recognizing that you need to know what the business does, and then you need to know where you slot yourself in that business and how you can actually deliver value. That's what counts at the end of the day. Like you can have the most brilliant dashboard, the best data products. What's the value? And if you can measure the value, you can articulate the value, whether you've been able to save money or whether you've been able to make money for the company. Those are the things you need to start focusing on as a data professional.
Amazing. Thank you. One thing I'm actually realizing about the whole group is the passion. I thought I'm passionate about this data space, but it's coming across from all our guest speakers and the amount of just information they're sharing. And I want to hear more. I want to probe more in some of the points that you guys are putting across. But unfortunately, time is against us. So, but thank you so much I think just for now, for what we've shared so far. I'm hoping even for the audience who've managed to spare some time to join us, are learning and are seeing how they can actually take what they learn here and apply in their lives, in their career, and in their organization. So we're just going to move to the next section, and we will try to maybe make it quicker than the first section. We're going to look at the impact and gaps and opportunities. We have touched on some of this, but let's just maybe go deeper on these topics. And my colleague is just going to help us and moderate for us on this. Thank you.
Sorry, technology. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tanda. Thank you so much to each and every one of us for, I've actually really, 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 beyond just learned a lot from today is also some of the things that has been in my heart to echo. A lot of the things that we've sort of touched on and echoed in this meeting. And I think it's been a very valuable one, even for me, let alone for a lot of us that are also here. So thank you very much for touching on these topics. Yeah, so at this point, we're going to look at specific gaps and opportunities, right? What are some of those untapped gaps and opportunities that we see, that we think that we can actually leverage on, some of those things, especially like room for collaboration between, across borders of, say, Africa and the diaspora. And I just maybe want to throw this question to Seliwe. If you could maybe just sort of, I mean, I know you've mentioned some of them, but if you just specifically just go through it again, and it would be nice, and then we can maybe take some questions. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we often look for collaboration, right, with the West. But the most immediate impactful collaboration is actually across our own borders and within our diasporas, right? As a senior manager, aligning BI strategy across multiple territories. So Access Bank is we are across multiple territories. So our main head office is in Nigeria. So I know the friction of regulatory misalignment. So we should collaborate to establish governance blueprint for data security and standardized KPIs. So Africa has a unique data sets like your mobile money transactions, specific disease management patterns, logistics in low infrastructure environments. So we should form part of data trusts in a critical areas like your value-based healthcare solutions, your micro logistics. This allows the aggregated but highly valued data to be shared ethically by competitors. So to train the continental AI models that are far more accurate and relevant to Africa than any global model. So that will be really my take there, talking from the experience from Access Bank.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Siliwe. But just a follow-up question on top of that. What can our community members do sort of like to position themselves so they are consistently on top of recruiters list, short list? For example, like how can they get themselves in front of recruiters and sort of bridge that skill gap?
Okay. So in terms of really upskilling yourself, I think what I've seen from my experience from the data talent really, is so quick to mention your tools, right? For example, you will say, I've got a skill in Power BI. This is my dashboard that I've done. So as I've just mentioned before, but the so what? How does that building that dashboard added value to that particular business, right? So I think when you start showcasing the project that you've done, how it added value to various industries, you're setting up yourself to top of the list in the recruiters' needs. So I think we need to, so what I normally tell my coaches is that build a profile around your skill set, showcase your skill set, and showcase business problems. How did you manage to solve those business problems? So it's very critical in these nowadays. Everybody has these tools, has technical skills, but we need to see it in practical. We need to see the value that you've added in these various businesses. So for me, it's just that.
Thank you very much for weighing on that. And I'm just going to weigh in a little bit on some of the points you've made before I come over to your Grant. Is I just want to point out one experience. So I was sort of recruiting for a senior, like a technical lead, data engineering technical lead within my organization. And I think just like you mentioned, a lot of things that I observed with those interviews is that a lot of the senior engineers and a lot of people are more focused on tools rather than on like problem solving. They get wrapped up in the code, mention all the specific tools without actual value for what you've actually achieved from an end-to-end perspective. And I think this was something I observed, going across the entire room, like just interviewing multiple candidates. And I think this was something I saw as a challenge. And thank you very much for actually pointing on that, because I think it gives a lot of the people on the call some perspective on how to also like think ahead when not just interviewing, but when looking at a business case. So thank you very much once again, Seliwe, for that. And to Grant, I think I'd like to ask you from an academic perspective, where do you see opportunities for academia and the industry to sort of work together more closely and bridge these gaps that we've highlighted?
Yeah, thank you for that once again. So yeah, I think the specifically, if we think about this diaspora that our colleagues mentioned earlier, I think it's honestly one of I would say Africa's strongest unfair advantages, right? There's a bit of a debate. Maybe we can debate that component later. But so yes, I believe that we have a world-class, we have world-class researchers as an example, right? We have world-class engineers. Secondly, I mean, I look at some of the colleagues that are here. And again, most of them want to, I would say, they want to give back, right? So we might not necessarily have any form of, let's say, structures in place, right? But we are certainly at a point where we can say that, or ask critical questions around, where are the cross-border data collaborators, right? I think that's what our colleague Siliwe said earlier. So this view as an example that talent doesn't necessarily have to resolve or rather relocate anymore, right? The idea could be that we can connect points, right? But then also, when we specifically think about Africa as a whole, right? And let's say from an academia perspective, my view is personally and professionally, is that I think Africa's edge is our complexity, right? I think that's something that we can really uh, be proud of. And why I say that is so if you can build a solution, whether it is through an organization in collaboration with universities, etc., you can build solutions in environments with as an example, with multiple languages, right? With informal economies, as many informal economies that we have on the continent. Challenges of, let's say, unstable infrastructures because of challenges of power, the electricity and grids, etc., etc. And then, of course, this idea of constrained resources. So if we are specifically thinking about that we are, in a way, already operating at a global level, in this case of problem solving, right? So just there. So for argument's sake, if we think about India as an example, right? India works on this model where they scale in a way through cost efficiency, right? We on the other side, as Africans, what do we do, right? We build our relevance through adaptability, right? So we tend to adapt quite frequently, etc. But the world is to a certain degree is heading towards complex, messy, unpredictable challenges that sometimes are either are clear. We can see that specific, but that's where the African talent really thrives, right? So where, as an example, this collaboration can truly become one is when these ivory towers that we sit in can typically start opening up their doors. Because I always say that from an industry perspective, my personal view is that industry is at least 3 to 5 years ahead of academia, right? Whether or not we want to admit that. That's I'm convinced that is the case, right? So as we start growing, as an example, to linking or, let's say, our competencies closer to what is required in industry, whether it is through industry collaborative teaching, workshops, but then also to create specialized courses, as an example, and to get specialized skills involved to specifically close that to close that specific gap, right? So I'll leave it there for now, Annie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Grant. I love how you sort of put that response, especially the fact that you then led us to our last and final question to the speakers. But this I would direct to Piso is on the conversation of India, for example. Now, India is often seen as a go-to-market for when you talk about global tech talents. And now looking at that example, what sort of unique advantages does Africa have to position itself as a sort of like strong contender in that global data talent space? And in practical terms itself, I like how can the continent sort of also shape itself to be recognized as a data hub for expertise?
Sure. I think one thing Grant probably touched on there is India is competing on scale.
Mm.
Like the population and number of people that India has got versus South Africa, we can't compete. I mean, South Africa, as an example, I'm looking at South Africa. South Africa can't even compete with your Nigeria in terms of population, right? And that's the context I'm gonna base this on because that's the regions I know very well. So India competes on scale. In terms of education as well, they've got a lot of people that are highly educated from a professional perspective. The other advantage they've got is what we would call, I don't know if it's the right term, but they're able to get visas into other areas quite easily. Where else, if you look at access to Europe for us Africans is a lot harder. Like to try and get a visa to work in the UK as a South African is hard, right? Where else it's a bit easier for the India market. So they've got access, they've got scale. We can't compete on those two things. Where we do compete is we don't have legacy. Like I know we beat up on it that we're still very young in terms of infrastructure. So we don't have legacy, we don't have a lot of legacy that's holding us down. So if you look at South Africa, a whole lot of our young people have got access to mobile devices. They didn't grow up with PCs in their homes, right? So not having that access to PCs means that you don't have the legacy of knowing how technology used to work on computers. It's not a lot of them that have that, but they've got mobile devices, all of them. So it's a lot easier for us to compete in the mobile industry, which is where I see technology actually heading. You look at people like Apple, they want to try and put AI on edge. So they want to put it on your devices. And that's where we're going. I feel like that's where we're going to have a lot of advantage. You look at the age as well. I don't know if it's sort of a double-edged sword because South Africa has a high rate of teenage pregnancy. And that's why I'm saying it's a double-edged sword. It's not something you really want. But the result of that is that the workforce globally, we've got the lowest median age in the workforce. I think we're like 19 or 20. Like that's the result. But you look at that, that's also an advantage going into the workforce because we have people that can get into the workforce a lot earlier and can learn a lot quicker. The thing that we probably need to think about again in Africa as a whole, it's not just a South Africa thing. In Africa as a whole is we need to get better at collaboration as Africans. We need to get better in terms of how do we exchange data as an example. How do we exchange infrastructure as another example? So that's where we need to sort of start getting a lot better in that. We've got this community here is called Ubuntu. Like we say it's Ubuntu. We don't necessarily practice it that well in terms of skills sharing, in terms of just collaborating as a whole. I think that's where we probably will have a lot more advantage because if you look at Africa as a continent, it is very diverse. We're very diverse in terms of language. So if you look here on this call itself, you've got South Africans like Grant, you've got Tanda, but we speak very different languages. We'll understand each other, but we're very diverse in terms of language. So that diversity of just South Africa itself then you split that across the whole of Africa. I think that diversity in knowledge is probably another huge advantage that we can take. We can actually take advantage of. We're not yet taking advantage of that, but we 100% need to be taking advantage of that. Some of this stuff is probably on us because of just how, I guess, Africa operates. And those are some stuff that we probably need help from government. So the governments need to make things a lot easier and a lot more accessible. In the academia space, I think as well, we need a lot of help. We've got like some brilliant universities in South Africa that are competing with some of the best universities in the world. And being able to bridge the gap between the education that is given in those universities versus what actually goes on in industry. And it's quite amazing that our industries in South Africa are willing to partner up with academia. They're willing to partner up with the governments. And I think we need to start taking advantage of that. We're not really yet taking advantage of it. So I work for Investec as a bank where we've taken a lot of pro math students. We've taken a lot of SEMA students, so chartered accountants, and some of those people become some of the most brilliant accountants that we've got. They become some of the most brilliant quantists, what do they call them? Analysts as well. But we're not taking advantage of that. Like you can count the number of companies that actually do that in South Africa as well. So I think those are some of the stuff we can start taking on to help us get an advantage because we, like I said, India is more scale. Like if you look at the number of payments they process, the number of people they've just got, the number of vendors they've got on the streets to actually produce food and all of that stuff, they work on scale and speed. That's not where we were able to compete. I think we compete more on diversity, a little bit more complexity, and there's a lot more networking between us. We just need to take advantage of that.
Wow. I must say that this whole session has been mind-blowing from start to finish. Thank you very much, Episo. Thank you very much to all of the speakers. And please, if you appreciate our amazing speakers, you could just put a like a sticker on the screen just to appreciate them, and even to yourselves as well, because it's been an amazing one. And I think this is the start of a lot of the collaboration that we talk about. This is a great start of that Ubuntu that we talk about. This is a great start of, sort of building that community for us to actually work together as Africans and as a people to better, our home, right? Because at the end of the day, we'll always, be we'll always think, okay, let me speak for myself. I am first a Nigerian before if so I have to always think about home. And so that is also why I believe Thanda and I sort of come together to sort of put this community together to achieve a lot of the things that we have discussed today. And please, thank you so much. If you missed any aspect of the conversation, I mean, the recordings are going to be available. We're going to be sharing them with you, definitely. So thank you very much to our amazing speakers, Grant, Tosin, Saliway, and Tupiso. Thunder as well, definitely. Thank you so much. I'm sure someone else will appreciate me. So yeah. But thank you so much, everyone. I will really, really appreciate. I don't know if we have time for questions, Thunder, but I know that we have gone beyond the 11:30 mark, but I don't know if we have room for like a little 5 minutes just to take some questions from the house. That would be really, really great to have.
Yeah, I think let's pose maybe 2 questions.
Yes, please.
I appreciate that some of our guests may have to jump off. So yeah, if you have any questions, just maybe raise your hand and then or even a comment. So it doesn't have to be a question. So a comment or say something. Don't be scared. Don't be shy. This is one of the very
It's a safe space. Okay, I can see Kayode has his hand up. Hi, Kayode.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the session today. It's been quite an interesting one, to be honest, because I got to see perspectives from different individuals, especially those in leadership, and I quite appreciate it. My question will then be, how often is this gathering going to be? Because I've learned a lot today. It's not just one of those sessions where you learn today and you are eager to see what's happening next, but it's also quite important to sort of understand how often we're going to meet to sort of learn and to see how we can fit that into our schedule. So that's my question.
Thank you so much for that question, Kayo. I hope I can call you Kayo. Kayode. Yeah, in terms of frequency, yeah, that's a good one, because again, it's something that we haven't landed on, and the main thing was we wanted to see how this one goes. But I'm keen to even get your guys' feedback as to should we do this, maybe every 2 months or every month. But it cannot also be too much, because obviously we all have our own lives and everything. So yeah, we're probably gonna share that on. So I'd say stay connected on our LinkedIn page, and also not just connected. Please do a post there as well if you have interesting information that you feel is going to be available to this community. We've launched the community now, and you are the community. So it's not just any and I, it's everyone. We are not doing this for any other thing other than let's just be take care of our country. We've taken so much. I mean, we've watched for so long other people coming in and taking the driver's seat. So, and we're saying now let's be the drivers of where we want to take our country and continent to. I hope that's good enough, Kayode. Any other comment or questions before we wrap up? Okay, there's nothing. Thank you again to all our guest speakers. I know you. I mean, when we threw the invite to you, we didn't even know if you will agree or accept it, and you did, and you've really, it has been such an enriching conversation. I've learned so much. I have a lot of things to even go and digest on myself. Also, thank you to the audience who have joined and listened in. I hope it has been just as impactful to you as well. I cannot stress enough the invites for you to come and collaborate with us. If you have things